afternoon, everybody. So first, there's going to be a prize drawing for how long we can see Mike can actually stay quiet.
Okay, so first of all, I take offense to that normally correct assessment. Spoiler alert, nobody won.
Those of us that all know Mike, yeah, you're laughing, you know that that's going to be interesting. But welcome. So I'm Tracy Rockwell with the Maricopa County School Superintendent's Office. Jill Wynn is here with me as well, too. So those of you that joined us in January, we told you about some changes that our office is going to be making in regards to hosting a timekeeping system. And after doing some research and things like that, we wanted to explore more and show all of you the features that Executime has and the interface that it has with Infinite Visions. So getting to work with the wonderful people that we know at Tyler, we're able to present this to you and show you what bells and whistles and interface Executime has, and see if it is a platform that you may want to go to. So we reached out to our main female in charge, Cassandra Knight. Many of you probably recognize her face from being at the ASBO Summer Conference. She's joined us there several times. And then we also have Rob Ann Hurst, who is with Tyler, and she is the head of the Executime division. Is that a good way to say that? Maybe, I'm not sure, but Rob Ann is with us as well too. So we're going to go through some of these things, and then we'll turn it over to any questions or stuff like that. So Cassandra, I'll turn it over to you now.
Okay, great. I will go ahead and let Rob Ann pull up our deck. And while she's doing that, I just want to thank everyone for making time today. We know this is a really hectic time of year for school districts and McKees staff, so we're very, very thankful that you've taken the time out to explore Executime with us. I just want to start by briefly touching on our agenda for the presentation today. I know we've already done some introductions, but we also want to discuss what exactly Executime is. We're going to touch on the real-time as-one integration we have with IV, some of the time entry options employees are going to have. Then we're going to jump into the live product demo, and we're going to wrap it up with mobile offering, some about implementation, and then we're going to open it up for questions and answers. So I know Tracy and Mike already gave us a pretty great introduction, and everyone's already very familiar with them. They've spent a lot of time exploring Executime with us so that we could partner in offering it as a solution to you guys. But first, I just want to talk a little bit about Total Tyler as a solution. So we know that previously districts have been forced to utilize third parties for their timekeeping needs. And while we definitely offered a variety of different interfaces with the majority of those providers, it wasn't ideal. Clients are looking at increasing efficiency at their sites, and they're really asking for real-time integrations. And with Infinite Visions being the system of record, it just made sense to explore our options. Executime was already a leading provider of timekeeping software to municipalities and local governments, so it made perfect sense, and we were very excited to have them join our family. And we immediately began investigating the needs that were really K-12 specific. And over the last year, we've started working on and rolling out enhancements that we believe make this the best solution to offer you guys, the best one on the market. We didn't stop there. We actually also acquired ReadySub, which just enforces Infinite Visions and Tyler being able to provide a total software solution. We definitely had our start in Arizona a long time ago, beginning with Budget Visions, which I'm sure that there's people on the phone that were part of that and have been with us that long. We also have a lot of Tyler employees that were there and still continue to serve clients in a multitude of aspects. So it means a lot to us to be able to continue being a local provider of these solutions, and to be able to provide you guys powerful solutions that really adhere to Tyler's mission. So with that, I am excited to let Rob Ann go ahead and get us started. Thanks, guys.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Cassie, and Tracy as well for that introduction. Just to kind of lay out, again, the agenda that Cassie went through, those are the steps that I'll be walking through. We're going to plan for the presentation part to be going until maybe about quarter till or 10 till. And then at that point, we'll transition into questions for those of you maybe that have chatted them or want to ask. Happy to answer all that we can today while we're together. And for those items that we can't answer, certainly we'll get back to you on those in writing. So let's start off with our discussion about Executime and our K-12 Tyler solution. So many of you are familiar with time and attendance hours entry systems. That is what Executime is. So as we have discussed, we do have real-time integration between Executime and Infinite Vision. We are Tyler. Infinite Vision and Executime are both Tyler products. Tyler controls both sides of the equation. And so we are excited to offer you this full solution. From the Infinite Vision payroll product into Executime, that communication will occur in real time. So as you enter a new employee, let's say, into the side of the house for Infinite Vision payroll, the data that Executime needs for that employee will automatically go from the Infinite Vision payroll product into Executime in real time. Of course, while the employee is working, we're going to have the opportunity to collect time worked from a variety of different sources. We'll talk about those options a little bit more later. And as that time is collected, of course, it will embed itself automatically in an electronic timesheet. And at the end of the pay period, when you're ready to process payroll, the payroll person we want them to be in control. So when they're ready, with a click of a button, direct database connectivity will occur between Executime and the Infinite Vision payroll side of the house. So that gives you an idea as to the 360-degree flow of data. We'll go into more depth in a few moments on that. But we also have, of course, our substitute finding solution, which we are very excited to share with you. It's recent. ReadySub is part of the Tyler family as well. And so Tyler is excited to be able to offer the full solution between Infinite Vision, Executime, and ReadySub. So as I mentioned, we're going to have a little bit more discussion about that real-time integration between Infinite Vision and Executime. I already shared the 360-degree concept, but as I mentioned in a bit more depth here, from Infinite Vision into Executime, that data is going to flow instantaneously in real time. So I mentioned employee information coming over, an employee's name, the position that they're in, their phone number, their email address. We do have outbound notification through Executime, so the phone number and email address will come in handy. And then additional things such as every time you run payroll, the accrual bucket balances from Infinite Vision are going to update in Executime. In real time, again, instantaneously, but again, every time you run payroll. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then some of the other items, again, that will be shared automatically between the two products. At the end of the pay period, payroll, again, in this instance, is 100% in control. When it's time for data to go from Executime into payroll, hours worked, accrued time used, so sick, vacation, comp time if it pertains, that will flow in that direction as well. I did want to share with all of you a view of what that will look like. So we're going to have a video at this moment. Right now, as you can tell on the screen, we do have the Infinite Vision product. So as we're taking a look at Infinite Vision, the areas here to the left are the areas that are going to be communicating with Executime. On the Executime side, this is where that information will be received. And if you note over here to the right, there is date and time components tracking when the two systems communicated. Now in this view that you see in front of you, if you look to the fourth row down, you'll notice there's an employee, Doris Ajara. This is in the Executime side of the house, but the data was placed here when this employee was entered into Infinite Vision. Now, when this person was data entered into Infinite Vision, the person doing the data entry made a brief spelling error, and instead of the name being accurate, A-J-A-R for the last name, you notice there's an extra A at the end. So what's going to happen, I'm going to play the video again, and you're going to notice that that last name is going to update. The reason it's updating is that my coworker on the Infinite Vision side fixed the spelling of that name in Infinite Vision. And instantaneously, when I refresh my screen, I'm going to notice now that that last A is gone and it's accurately spelled. So real-time, instantaneous communication when data is flowing from Infinite Vision into Executime. Now, we also have full 360-degree flow of data. So my apologies, my video just restarted. But we're going to come now to the capability of Executime to go ahead and process and send data the opposite direction from Executime into Infinite Vision. And again, this flow will occur when it's time for you to run payroll. So when it's time to run payroll, in this video example, we're going to send this one person's information for Crystal from Executime into Infinite Vision. However, you could send any user-defined group of people. It could be your whole school, it could be the whole district, it could be any department, user-defined listing. But I'm going to walk you through those steps now. So within Executime, payroll is in control, and you'll click a button, move to payroll system when you're ready. Executime will say, are you sure? And it'll confirm who it moved. Now, here on the Infinite Vision side, you're able to take a sneak peek at what is already directly connected with Infinite Vision via a direct database connection. You can see here Crystal was a custodian and then also a student security aide. We're going to say, yep, that's great. And then because of Infinite Vision functionality, we're going to go ahead and bring the leaves in. So sick time, vacation time, things of that nature. Then once you've looked at it, you're happy and satisfied, we're going to go ahead then at that point and proceed with the next step of the processing, which is going to be to go ahead and actually post these transactions. So that gives you a brief look at how the integration occurs today between the two systems. Now, we mentioned that we have current integration between Executime and Infinite Vision, and we just saw some samples of that. But we also shared that integration goes beyond these two data sharing products. That's because integration is an enormous story for Tyler Technologies, connected communities. When you put data in one place, you should be able to use it in any other system that belongs to Tyler without having to do duplicate data entry. To facilitate that concept, which is we're building upon it every day, one thing that you will be able to take advantage of is Tyler Identity. If you haven't heard of it yet, it's nothing that your different districts will need to buy, but it is a behind-the-scenes component that's part of your Evergreen program that will allow single sign-on, one user ID and one password for absolutely any Tyler product that you own. So in this conversation, it will apply to Executime as well as to Infinite Vision, and then in the future, ReadySub, etc. In addition to single sign-on, one user ID and one password for any Tyler product, we also wanted to make you aware of employee access. Today, you all may think of this as the Infinite Vision Employee Self-Service product. If you own Infinite Vision Employee Self-Service, then this too will just be part of your Evergreen program, part of an upgrade. But Employee Access is a Tyler-wide initiative, and we're excited that when you get that upgrade, you're going to be able to access Executime from within Employee Access if you have both sides and own both sides. So one-stop shop, one place to go for your employees, and one user ID and password. For those of you that happen to own Versatran, we also have a part of that Tyler Drive for bus drivers that are driving routes. Hours for their routes will automatically flow into Executime as well. So proprietary integration that only Tyler Technologies is going to be able to offer. In addition to those items that currently exist today, we also have additional things in plan for the future. So integration with ReadySub. That's going to be proprietary, and I have on there at no cost because if you currently have an interface today between your Infinite Vision product and a third-party substitute finding system, then if you went with the ReadySub route, you would be able to then discontinue that payment on that integration because integration between ReadySub and Infinite Vision and ReadySub and Executime is going to be free because they're all Tyler products. Also in the future, already plans are underway to have calendars and work schedules from Infinite Vision flow into Executime as well. Now, I mentioned that employee access, so I wanted to show an image to you. Some of you may have seen this. You may be familiar with it. This is an image of what employee access could look like. But if you purchased Executime, Executime then would also be accessible directly from within the employee access product, again, with that one user ID and one password that we mentioned before. Let's go ahead and switch gears briefly. So far, we've been talking about integration. Now we want to talk about what options you all will have to offer to your employees to get information into the Executime product. So hours that employees are working coming into Executime. For that, we have a variety of different options. In a few moments, you're going to notice that I'll be demonstrating the live environment with this URL software access. So you'll see some virtual clock in, clock out opportunities from there. As people are clocking in and out, timestamps will go into the electronic timesheet. It might be a little difficult to see that from here, but again, we're going to go into the live environment in a moment. It'll be much clearer. We also have the ability to allow duration of time to be entered. So if you don't want to have a person clock in and clock out, you strictly want them to say, hey, I was here 7 hours today. We could permit that. We also have the ability to have time entered into the timesheet through the software for attendance check-in. So if you only want someone to say, yes, I was here today, and then have Executime automatically default in time from their schedule, that's yet another option. And then last but not least, of course, for salaried people that maybe only need to put in sick or vacation, exception time entry, we can accommodate that too. So those options I just mentioned are all available from the software. We also offer those options mostly from the mobile device. So with a smartphone or a tablet, you could permit people to clock in, clock out, enter a duration of time, etc., for hours that they've worked. We'll talk more about mobile in a little bit. For those of you that do want physical clocks, that's yet another option. Those can, of course, can hang on the wall. And then when it comes time to an employee saying to the clock, hey, it's Rob Ann, I'm trying to clock in for work. We have 4 or 5 different methods that you all could select for how the clock will know that it's Rob Ann. One method could be to type in a user ID and password. Another could be biometric with the fingerprint of the employee that actually registers on the clock and automatically clocks the employee in. And then, of course, in this day and age, a popular option is if somebody has badges that they use to come in and out of buildings perhaps today. You likely could use that exact same badge, hold it up close to the clock. The clock can know Rob Ann is clocking in or clocking out without even touching the clock. And then, of course, we've also got barcode capability, another automated way for a badge to tell the clock who's coming in or out, and also other methods. Last but not least, import capability. We talked about ReadySub. We could bring time off for teachers, for example, in from ReadySub, or as you see, if you have a CSV type file, Excel, data could be brought in from other types of sources as well. So mix and match, department to department, team to team, whatever you need, Executime offers the items that you've seen here. Now, when it comes time to getting hours into the system, what we looked at so far is the ability to have employees put time in, but we also, of course, can automatically add time to the system. So overtime type components, our rules can be set up on a user-defined basis to automatically add overtime. Here, I did add a unique type of overtime that we offer, weighted average overtime. So if you have an employee that's a bus driver and a lunch server and also a coach, they do all 3 jobs. How do you know if they're all earning, each job, pays a different rate? How do you know the overtime to pay? Well, the weighted average overtime can assist in coming up with the appropriate overtime component to pay that employee. Of course, if you have contracted employees that are working, hours worked over or under that contracted or annualized amount, that could be tracked within Executime. And then, of course, employees that work outside of their normal jobs. So maybe they earn other types of pay, helping with the school fair, for example. That could be tracked on the timesheet, of course, as well. So multiple ways to track time and numerous ways that are automated within Executime. So let's go ahead and jump into the live environment and spend the next 20 minutes or so taking a look at just a few of the highlights that Executime has to offer. So I'm going to progress through a few different levels of complexity. We're going to start with a very most simplistic view, and we're going to get a little bit deeper as we go through some various user scenarios. The very most simplistic option could be to use Executime in a kiosk type mode. The kiosk type mode would strictly present this virtual clock where an employee could type in a user ID and password into a computer maybe that you have by a door or a tablet that you have by a door, and that employee then could clock in and clock out. So in its very most simplistic form, that's one option that you might have. Now, in addition to that, we also, as I mentioned, have the ability to come actually right into the software, and from within the software, have employees do clock in and clock out capability options, and in addition to that, other things as well. So I've logged in as Sam. Sam is a part-time person, maybe a volunteer, something of that nature. Maybe you want to track the time that Sam worked and have them clock in and out. But in addition to clocking in and out, perhaps you just want them to be able to see their timesheet. If you want to limit capability to do something very basic like that, this is an example of a very streamlined, simplistic view that an employee might have. Now, on this very basic timesheet, point out just a few highlights. Here are the pay period, how many hours were worked at a glance. Please ignore the overtime here. I have a unique calculation working, but we would customize the rule to enforce your rules. And then how many total hours have been worked this pay period. We'll look at a more realistic timesheet in a few moments, but I did want to point out this big red circle. Executime has visual alerts. These visual alerts will allow you to see things that you want to have brought to your attention. In this instance, the transaction is incomplete. Well, sure enough, on the 12th, the employee clocked in and forgot to clock out. That big red circle will stay there until an employee fixes it and or a supervisor fixes it. And then depending on setup choices, we can even enforce things based on those visual alerts. In addition to being able to see the timesheet, a few additional components. If you had an employee that wanted to print the actual timesheet, that is a possibility. Now, an employee doesn't need to print the timesheet because we're going to provide an unlimited amount of electronic timesheet history. So from the moment you begin using Executime, employees can come back and see any historical records. But if they do want to print it, we make that available. And then because we are part of the Tyler technology family, we have similar capabilities to Infinite Vision in checking for help components, participating in Tyler community, where you could ask other Executime users, hey, how are you handling this? How does that operate? Then, of course, support. The same capability and path that you would take to ask for support for Infinite Vision are going to be the same support experts that will be helping you with Executime, and they're cross-trained. So you get the best of both worlds with both your Infinite Vision payroll expertise as well as your Executime expertise, because of both, of course, both affect payroll. Let's go ahead and log in now as another employee. This employee is going to also be hourly, but they're going to have a bit more capability. This is Henry. We'll talk about a few brief things as Henry. Then we'll also, after we're done looking at Henry, take a look at a supervisory perspective and a payroll perspective. But right now, as Henry, an hourly employee, he also could clock in and clock out. If you all do have desire to have an employee do additional things, such as potentially say, hey, I'm working in a unique position today that I don't always work in. Maybe sometimes I'm an aide, and right now I'm going to fill in as a substitute, perhaps. Those unique positions might be selected, and we have other types of unique capability as well, should your school need to take advantage of that. But, of course, clocking in and clocking out can be done very simply here as well without the need to go into that editable area. We also have messages that we can push out to the entire organization or to various departments. And as you saw before, the time that is being clocked in and clocked out or documented as a duration of time or sick or vacation components, they're all going to embed themselves in the electronic timesheet. Again, we've taken a brief look at the previous electronic timesheet, but just to point out a few more things from a little bit of a more robust view of a timesheet. This particular employee is set up on a biweekly pay period, so at a glance, they can tell the total hours so far that they've earned in this biweekly pay period. Of course, we offer rounding capabilities, and if somebody had had sick or vacation time, we could see that in the timesheet as well as in that summary view at a glance. We have the ability, if you want someone to only need to clock in the morning and clock out in the evening, to offer auto deduction, meaning we could automatically take out 30 minutes, 45 minutes of time for lunch. Of course, if they did work through that, we could add it back in. And we have the ability to allow time worked to be tagged with unique components. Unfortunately, these days, COVID and pandemic response components, people do want to track how much time was spent towards those types of efforts. So if you did want to be able to track that and then report upon that, certainly Executime can assist. And as I shared before, the ability to automatically enforce unique things, such as when does overtime kick in for this employee? If your organization offers comp time, we have a variety of ways that we could accommodate that. And then also another example here, in this instance, maybe a maintenance person had to come back in the evening to fix a pipe that burst in one of the buildings. The maintenance person was only there for 12 minutes, but Executime automatically knew to pay that person for 2 hours. So these are just a few examples of some of the things that we could automate and automatically offer for each of your organizations. Now, in addition to that, at the end of a time period or a pay period, typically clients want the employee to sign the timesheet, verifying that the time they worked was accurate and true. The sentence I have highlighted is user defined, so you can adjust that to read however you wish. And this will invoke workflow. We haven't talked a ton about workflow yet, but I certainly will. We have workflow capability for timesheets and also for time off requests and also for something new that Executime offers called hours requests. Our workflow can have, of course, employee triggers, such as you see here, the employee signing their timesheet. And we can have up to 99 levels of workflow approval. Doubt anybody will have that many, but we can offer that. And we even offer workflow approval for unique things. So let's say anytime an employee works overtime, you might want Susie in accounting to look at every overtime hour, or every time the pandemic COVID project is tagged in a record, you want Kim to look at it, or a grant, time put toward a grant was used. Workflow is that robust and that flexible that we could accommodate those types of things as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about workflow, but I want to switch gears and briefly talk about accrual bucket balances and how those can communicate between Infinite Vision and Executime, and then how those can also communicate back into Infinite Vision. So in this instance, for the employee, the accrual buckets that you see here will be Infinite Vision accrual bucket codes, not these are mine, but yours will be yours. For every pay period, we're going to bring over the current balance from Infinite Vision, and we're going to hold in Executime future time off that's either been requested or is pending, and we'll let the employee know how much time they currently still have actively available. In this instance, 0 hours. So if I wanted to ask for sick time, there are 4 different options that you all have when it comes to how you wish for Executime to handle that. One of the more popular options these days is to offer a tiered withdrawal hierarchy bucket that you can set up in a user-defined way. So since there's no time here in sick leave, perhaps you want the 8-hour request for the future to automatically go to maybe their vacation or PTO bucket next, and perhaps withdraw from there. Again, the user-defined hierarchy that you all will set up, and we have other options as well. Of course, we're going to keep track of every sick day, every vacation day in an audit trail type capacity so that employees can see Here is some time from 2021, 2020, and we're going to keep track of all that in a calendar view as well. Within the calendar view, you can have employees see only their own requests or their coworkers' requests, and colors mean something as well. Won't go into that depth at this moment, but certainly an option for you all to explore a little bit further as you get more familiar with Executime. In order to put in a time off request, it could be done right from here. It also could be input from a mobile device or from a clock. One other thing that we offer for time off is the actual, not for time off, but for requests, is an hours request. Think of this as an electronic form. It has workflow behind it. It also has outbound approvals with email, text, or both. It also has the ability to embed automatically in the calendar that we saw and or in the timesheet. And it's frequently used for things such as training or things of that nature. I wanted to share with you also a supervisory view, as I mentioned. So coming in as a supervisor, I'm going to have yet even more capability. In this instance, I'm looking at a dashboard. I set this up that when Rob Ann comes in, she wants to see a dashboard of everybody that reports to me. These dashboards and these views of who reports to you certainly can be unique for each of your users. And of course, who they can see will be based on not only their personal groupings and preference, but security. From this dashboard, I'll point out just a few highlights. First of all, violations. Those visual alerts that we talked about obviously are visible here. And remember, Henry had an issue with his timesheet. Now, we saw that a moment ago that a transaction was incomplete, but the supervisor may not be aware. So we want to call that to the supervisor's attention. The supervisor then, and I keep using supervisor, but certainly it could be an administrative person in the school, whoever you give security authority to, could then drill right into the timesheet and say, oh yes, here's the issue. And sure enough, on the 18th, the employee clocked in and they forgot to clock out. Now, as the manager, potentially you could edit this if you have security authority, or there are other options as well. Other edits could be done to the timesheet. The timesheet could be approved right from here, but we also offer for approval.
Rob Ann, can I interrupt you for a quick second? We lost you, Rob Ann. Oh,
Yeah, she's right there. Now she's muted. Tell her to unmute.
Rob Ann, you're muted.
There we go. So I apologize. I just,
That's okay.
my phone disconnected me, but.
Oh, okay. So I wanted to stop you for a really quick second, if we could. Two different questions. And one I put up because Jill and I get it more and more frequently. With the employee entering a leave request and how it funnels over here to the supervisor, like you're showing, can a district set up blackout days? So it's part of the work calendar that the employee has to work, but they're not allowed to submit a leave request. Like for instance, we're coming up to Memorial Day and lots of employers, they don't want people to take a 4 or 5 day weekend. Is it possible, or would it be possible in the future that they can set a blackout day?
We don't, through this direct tool at this moment, have blackout day capability that I could show you, but I will make a note of that. And then Tracy, we can chat with you guys about a few other potential options and certainly talk to product ownership about that.
Okay. That would be great. And then one other question we had, because everybody has their own terminology. So are we, or could a district edit any of the field names? Like how we have, or right now, ET has benefits, which is actually the leave plans going through ET. Can you change that to say leave versus benefits?
We can change some
Okay.
fields at this moment. That specific one that you asked about is not one that I am familiar with can be changed. But again, I will check with our product ownership and let you know. But Other fields, yes, we do have ability to change labels of certain fields within the system. So to an extent, we can accommodate that. Just not sure if we can do that exact one that you'd mentioned, but I'll check on it.
Thank you. Hope I didn't get you off your groove and your rhythm. It was going great. But this was a great spot that I thought, oh, these are relevant to right here. I wanted to stop you for a minute.
They are, and I can't see the questions. So thank you for doing that. Feel free to do
Okay.
the point that you would like. And yeah, it was unique. The phone just cut me off. So you all can hear me all right, and turned out
Yes.
to be good timing for everything. So I, again, want to be respectful of time. I'm going to try to wrap up in the next 5 minutes or so. And I'm assuming, hopefully here, everybody heard before my phone cut me off that the violations component was viewed when we drilled into the timesheet, so we could see that. And then I also in the timesheet pointed out edit capability and approval capability. And then here from this dashboard view, you can have mass approval type capability as well. So if you
Yes.
have certain employees maybe within your organization that you want to grant mass approval capability to, we can permit that. But and it's securable. So if you don't like it, not everybody has to have it.
Okay. And you can keep going, Rob Ann. Don't listen to what Mike said.
All righty. Thank you. Thank you. so
I'm
much.
back, miss.
Everything.
Did I miss anything?
You're just signing the check.
Well, okay.
Alrighty, so here on this dashboard, we talked briefly about the violations component in the visual alert, but you notice there are two more columns here. We have the employee column and then the approval column, and both of these columns have visual alerts as well. The employee column is related to workflow. Did the employee sign their timesheet? That signing of a timesheet could be done from the software or from a mobile device or from a time clock if you're using that. So did the employee verify that the hours they worked were accurate? In this instance, nobody did. That's not a concern because we're still in the middle of the pay period. The next column is, did a manager or an approver approve time yet? And again, you can have up to 99 levels of approval. Nobody has approved time. That's again, not a concern, but we did have the yellow yield signs here. So of course we think of a traffic signal colors, and that's letting us know that 0 hours have been worked. You'll see other messages pop up with those as well. To the right, of course, you probably noticed, you can see a summary of how many regular hours, overtime hours, benefits, etc. And again, that's an area that I'll ask about for those of you that saw when Tracy asked the question, it was related to sick or vacation components being called something different. So we'll look into that a little more deeply. Now, I'd mentioned that we can see various pay periods. So in order to show you a little prettier dashboard with prettier colors, let's come to a previous pay period. At this point, we do have employees that have approved those timesheets. So these green colors are really what we want to see, but 2 people did not. And for those 2 employees, approvers didn't approve those timesheets either. So there are settings within Executime that you can select when you're setting this up to say, do you want to go ahead and permit these items to go to payroll for payment and then come back and fix the problems later? Or do you require that everything be in perfect shape, everything be approved before this information can communicate with Infinite Vision Payroll? Those are setting options that you'll have within Executime. So whatever your policy is, it'll just be set up that way. And I mentioned that you can have an unlimited amount of history to view. So not only can employees go back and see an unlimited number of timesheets, but you all as management can go back as far as you need. Mine goes back to 2008, I believe, and see historical information here. This dashboard is a popular one. We also have additional dashboards that are frequently used. So in this instance, you notice this is a statistical view showing us that a pending time off request is waiting approval. And we've got timesheets that are awaiting approval as well. In order to approve those items, we already saw how we could approve timesheets, but we also have time off request approval. Time off requests could be approved from a mobile device. So if you are using mobile, that would be one option. But you also could come into Executime, and from this view, you notice that in this instance, there were 8 hours that were requested off. Once that time is approved, the employee will have a remaining balance. And then whatever your code is, You can make the decision now. Is that acceptable for this person to take that time off or not? And go ahead and approve it or decline it right from here. But if you're visual like me, you may prefer the calendar view. I like to come into my calendar here on the 21st. I can see the big red notice that a request has been made. And if as a manager, I wanted to approve it or decline it from here, I could. Once I approve that, email, text, or both is now going to shoot off to the employee, letting the employee know that that was approved. I just had my phone let me know that an email had arrived, and sure enough, here it is. So you can see right here, this email letting you know on the date and time, yay, my vacation was approved by my manager. If I wanted to look at more details, I could bring this hyperlink right into Executime so that I could see those detailed components. So as a manager, multiple ways to approve hours requests, timesheets, and/or time off requests. Now, as we're interacting, we present yet another dashboard that is what we call the Who's Here board. If you want to make sure at a glance that you know what's going on with your staff, specifically who's clocked in, who's clocked out, who's at a unique location maybe where they don't typically work, who's on call if there's an emergency, who's perhaps in training. This is a user-defined list that is automatically updated in many instances, depending on the way you set up Executime to let you know where folks are at a glance. This happens to be everybody that reports to me, but you could also have all of your cafeteria staff across the district, all of your school, etc. From here, if you have mobile and you're using geolocations, a map could appear showing you where the employee was at the time they last interacted with Executime. And I have an example of that I'll share with you in a moment. And then also, of course, phone number and email address for easy communication with your staff.
Robin?
Yes, there a question?
Yeah, there's one quick question. Is there a way to show expected or budgeted hours?
There is a schedule capability within Executime. So from that schedule capability, that potentially be the expected hours. We also have user-defined fields, which potentially could hold a summary of budgeted hours. But I made a note of that request. And again, after the presentation, I'm happy to address in more depth with Tracy and team and you all as schools, if you'd like, how we could accommodate that. Additional questions at this point? No? Okay. So everything that we do within Executime, we are going to be tracking through an audit trail. The audit trails are going to share what computer a change perhaps was made from, the date, the time, who made the change, the value before the change, the value after the change, and things of that nature. So from a supervisory perspective, that's something that I have the ability to view right from here. Now, as a supervisor, you may also be given access to reports. Of course, if you want your end users to have access to reports, you certainly could grant that as well. It's just a matter of security authorities. But for reporting, Executime is going to provide a host of base reports, as you can see here on the left. Each of those base reports could be run and exported to Excel if you wish, or other methods as well. In addition to having the ability to be able to run reports and potentially export them to Excel, we also provide a data dictionary. The data dictionary is going to give you access to every field virtually within Executime and allow you to create your own user-defined reports. And the tool that we use for creating those user-defined reports is the SSRS tool. For those of you that are in payroll, you would come into the area that you're seeing on the screen now. I have this visible from a supervisor access perspective, from a security perspective, but really typically we see payroll functions only available and visible to those folks, of course, that manage and run payroll. This is a very secured component right here. But for those of you that are in payroll, when it's time for you to begin to run your payroll, you would come in, and the first thing typically that employees or that payroll staff will do is lock the pay period. Locking the pay period is going to say, I'm ready to start double checking this now. I don't want an administrative person or an end user coming in and changing anything. I need to make sure that things stay as is. So first step would be to lock the pay period. You too could come in and sort by columns. So if you wanted to come in and pull all your problem records to the top, or every employee that didn't sign yet, pull those records to the top for easy viewing, you could. If you wish to drill into the timesheet, you absolutely could. In addition to that, perhaps you'll have availability to edit timesheets. It all just depends on what your organization decides. In addition to being able to see this information, of course, we have additional tools to help you look for outliers. You can see here regular, overtime, sick, or vacation, but you want to be able to see this from multiple perspectives to be really comfortable and confident that when you send this to Infinite Vision, that the hours are accurate. So we provide a pivot table type concept. It's basically going to show similar data to what you see here, but in a unique perspective, again, to help point out outliers. You'll also be trained on how to use various reports. Those various reports, trainers will show you what to look for, again, to make sure things are in line. And then in addition to that, if you like Excel, I personally do like Excel, so I like to show this, but it's not required. There is no flat file integration. You don't need an Excel file at all. The direct database connection is already written by Tyler between Executime and Infinite Vision. But if you did want to come in for any employee and take a look, I'm going to pick Benny King for this particular row that you see highlighted. I would easily be able to see for Benny here the dates that regular hours were worked, and in this instance, 8 hours were worked that day. Up here a little higher, you notice we have positions indicated as well. So if you have employees changing positions from time to time, that will be clear through here. If you use other types of codes in your rules and policies we enforce, like callback or overtime, all that would be visible here as well. And of course, you can save this and slice it and dice it however you like. And just a good reference tool, in my opinion, but I've had some clients share they prefer not to use Excel. So I just want to, again, share that that's an option. There are steps, as we shared, to double check the hours that have been worked. And once you're happy and comfortable, you'd click this button, Move to Payroll. We saw this button of Move to Payroll in the video that we saw toward the beginning of the presentation. And once that is clicked, the data, again, via a real-time direct database connection, will move from Executime into Infinite Vision for payroll processing. I use the term move. It still will be here. We'll be tracking everything in an audit capability, but it will directly communicate with Infinite Vision at that point. So those are the highlights. I wanted to go back into the PowerPoint and address mobile as well as a few additional things. But before I leave the software, anybody
Yes.
have this moment?
There's one more question, Roban. Can you print a user access report, kind of like a report that shows the access that different employees have?
There are various reports that show security components. And we have the data dictionary to be able to show all those details. I will make a note to follow up and again, provide what we do have, Tracy, after the presentation so that you all can see those details of those items.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions at this moment?
No, ma'am.
No? All righty. So I'm going to take this and come back over into our PowerPoint view and continue on with a few additional things that we wanted to share. Mobile in this day and age is a very popular item, fortunately and unfortunately, I know. So I wanted to share with you a bit more depth about our mobile offering. For our mobile offering, it comes with geofencing capability. If somebody is within the geofence, then you'll have the ability to let them clock in and clock out from their mobile device. We'll take a closer look at the mobile device capability in just a second. But if the person is outside of a geofence, then the clock in and clock out buttons that exist through the mobile device would not be functioning. They would not operate. Of course, you can have multiple geofences for an employee. So today what's popular is to have one around the school where the employee might work or schools, and another maybe around their home. But perhaps if they're at the Starbucks parking lot, you don't want them to be able to clock in from there. So that gives you an example of what geofencing could do should you wish to use it. We also have, of course, the ability for geolocation. Geolocation has, from the timesheet as well as from dashboards, as we saw, the ability to let an employee or administration click a button, and you can see a map of exactly where the person was when they clocked in. I happened to create this map from my home, and I know it's a little blurry because I blew it up, but I can tell you that was pretty accurate. Sometimes it even shows almost the part of my house that I'm in. From the mobile perspective, we have the ability to just have mobile be as a shortcut on your desktop. So super easy access, whatever you're, similar to what your employees are likely very used to today. Once they click that button, the mobile component can open up, and the items that you see here are options that we offer the employee via the mobile device. If you wish to use clock in or clock out, that could be controlled via the geofence if you want, or it doesn't need to be. And it also can completely be made invisible. So if you want to offer mobile to people, but you don't want them to have any ability to clock in and out, not a concern. We just make that invisible. Nobody would ever even see it. Other things to be able to see from the mobile device would be the time card inquiries, so they can see their timesheets. They can also see their accrual bucket balances coming directly from Infinite Vision, put in a time off request, place perhaps an hours request. If you remember, that could be for things such as training. Also could be used if somebody forgot to clock out and they got home and they thought, oh my goodness, I forgot to clock out. They could use that hours request to notify their manager and just let the manager approve, and then it can automatically update the timesheet. We also can let employees electronically sign their timesheet directly from the mobile device. And then we also have the ability to let managers come in, administrative people with security authority, approve time off, approve those hours requests, and approve timesheets right from the mobile device. And then to the far right, an image of the mobile component for hours worked in the summary view, and then also detailed view. So from a mobile perspective, certainly we could go into more depth as questions are asked or time goes by, but that gives you a good overall view. Before I move on further, let me pause and ask, were there questions related to the mobile side of things at all? No?
No questions.
All righty. So if you would like to become a total Tyler, which we're excited about and hoping that you will, Tyler Technologies does have a standard implementation plan. So I did want to share with you a little bit more about that. The same steps that you likely went through with your Infinite Vision implementation are going to be similar for what you'll go through with Executime. The first step is assessing and designing. We want to make sure we understand, and of course, in this instance, we'll do it with Tracy's assistance. She's very familiar with all of the organizations. So we will be taking a look at how your Infinite Vision setup exists, and we'll be coordinating that with Executime's capability and our direct database connectivity to make sure that you have the most efficient setup possible. And again, you're going to have expertise from the Infinite Vision payroll side of things, as well as from the Executime side of things for the very best possible match. You'll never end up with two companies pointing fingers at one another saying, oh, we tried. No, we are one company. So you're going to have one expert, just as Cassie, obviously, on the line with us will be your one representative for the Tyler products that you own. In addition, once that assess and design is done, think of it sort of as an architectural drawing. Once there's agreement with you all on that architectural drawing for your plan, of course, we'll be installing as well and working with the MCSS team on that, training your organization again in conjunction with Tracy. And then we'll be testing to make sure everything is coming out perfectly the way that you need for it to. Running parallels is probably a phrase you're familiar with. And then you'll be live. As I mentioned, you will be having Infinite Vision experts work with you. That'll range from project management that'll be guiding you through this. And again, working in conjunction with Cassie and with Tracy in your implementation. Also, the trainer that you'll be working with is going to have Infinite Vision expertise and Executime expertise, as I mentioned. The process that you'll be going through is going to be tailored for MCSS members. because we have that great resource of Tracy and her team, we're going to be able to provide consistency across and also gain knowledge and want to leverage that to the benefit of everyone. And then frequently we're asked, how long will it take to implement Executime? Depending on a variety of factors. There will be specific unique implementation timeframes for the different MCSS members. So when it comes to that, we are going to delve a little bit more deeply with Tracy and with you all individually, and we'll be able to share more specifics, again, on an individual organization by organization basis based on the group plan that we'll be coordinating with all of you. So if there are more implementation related questions, happy to entertain those, or any questions whatsoever that I could go back and address at this point. I'm glad we got some in during the presentation, but if anybody has thought of anything or would like me to go back into the software to address some additional items, happy to do so at this point.
Rob Ann, I know one of the questions is often about the budgeted hours versus the work hours. Since we do have some time, do you mind going into the Executime and showing where the scheduling is at for that visual perspective?
Yes, we have a variety of different components related to schedules. So for the schedule related pieces, there would be the ability to set schedules up within Executime. The schedules that I have security set up right now to be able to show you would be a little bit more consistent schedules. So there is a section within Executime where you're able to come in and set up more consistent type schedules. Now, when I share with you this consistent schedule, I'm going to share a little bit of a caveat as well. These consistent schedules are going to give you the ability to be able to say, these days of the week, these are the typical hours that folks will work. We're then going to be able to have schedules similar to this, and we can do a variety of things with these schedules. We'll be able to, of course, potentially have reports that relate to them. We'll be able to use them and leverage them when it comes to calculation potentially of overtime. And typically, of course, these schedules are going to be able to reflect the type of budgeted type components that you all have today. Now, as you can tell, this particular schedule is for a Monday through Friday and goes into Saturday and Sunday, but it's a 1 week type view. There will be times when these schedules will change, of course, week to week. So we do have the ability through the set component to be able to combine various schedules together. So if 1 week, the schedule might look one way, another week it will look completely different, not a concern. Executime can accommodate that. Now, in addition to the work schedules that you see here, I know that obviously with schools, there are going to be holidays and other types of components with different breaks, et cetera. So for holidays, for example, as the system exists currently, there are payroll capabilities to be able to come in and add holidays. So the holiday schedules here to the left do exist to be able to automatically add those to a timesheet, automatically insert those where need be in conjunction with the schedule so that we can come up with an accurate picture of when an employee has worked during that time frame. I will share, though, I mentioned there might be a caveat. So I did mention in the PowerPoint that what I know is currently in discussion and even a bit underway already is the ability to have those calendars and work schedules automatically flow from Infinite Vision into Executime so that you all would not need in the future to go in and separately set up a holiday or separately set up schedules similar to what you see that what I showed you prior in the schedule side of things. So I know that with that enhancement that is being discussed, and again, I don't have a release date for it, so I don't have more detail specifically on it either. So I'm not able to go into a lot more depth. But once that is completed, you're going to have more an image in Executime, data in Executime that more accurately directly reflects exactly what you have in Infinite Vision. Now you can still set those items up, but at the first blush, it will be more of a separate setup in Executime, in addition to the setup that you have in Infinite Vision. But eventually that will be automatically coming from Infinite Vision into Executime. I don't have a report at the moment that I'm going to be able to share with you. That I'm thinking in the back of my mind, yes, I have this data perfectly set up to share that with you. But again, I did make a note, and I'm absolutely happy to go through and provide some additional examples that we can share, and make sure I get that to you, Tracy, so you can share that with the rest of the group as well.
Wonderful, thank you. So I know one thing that some of the districts right now are accustomed to is, and you did show an employee that had multiple different job types that would not be under necessarily the same supervisor or department. With Executime, are you able to workflow route certain job codes or positions or supplementals to a certain supervisor versus another one, so that, you know, Tracy is only seeing transportation and Jill is only seeing food service?
Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful.
We can do that.
Okay. And then we just got another question. So similar to what we can do in Visions, can we change grid colors, size of the lines, and move the columns around in Executime?
So I heard a couple of questions in that one question. So I was
Right.
trying to,
Sorry.
but I lost it a little bit. I didn't keep up well. So if you wouldn't mind, please going back and addressing.
Not at all.
And then I can
So
answer.
can we change grid colors?
Yes, you can.
Okay, and the size of the lines?
Yeah.
Like the font
Lines.
size, and make it larger if necessary?
Yeah. So let me share with you a little bit more. It's easy for me to show you this answer. So these answers. So the grid colors could be adjusted even on an employee by employee basis. So these are the colors Rob Ann has selected, but I can go into a full color palette and make those adjustments. When it comes time to adjusting the size of the lines, what I have found personally, Executime does not have a field that I could go to easily point to and say, yes, you can change the font size or you can change the height. But we are accessible through the web and through the internet. So two tools that I use to do that when I wish is to come in and adjust my zoom level on my screen. So if you wanted to see something a little more zoomed in, you could. Of course, sometimes if you want to look at a full timesheet at a glance, you could adjust that way. So that tool could be one option. Then of course, your desktop properties potentially could assist as well. But within Executime, as far as an administrative setting to make the font bigger or the row's height smaller, that would be something that we would need to rely on the Zoom tool that I just showed you to accommodate.
Okay, that works. And then the last one was, so in Infinite Visions, we can on the grid grab a column and shift columns around if we like to do like a different grid layout. You know, we just want our columns in a different order than what is the default. Are you able to move columns around? And
We
within
can.
that, once you move the columns around, can you save that as a grid layout?
So we can have that to some degree. Again, you maybe could tell from this, we were a separate product prior to coming into the Tyler family. So we don't do everything exactly as Infinite Vision does. Some things are going to be slightly different. We do have the ability in certain situations, for example, on the timesheet, we do have the capability of being able to allow you to pick certain columns that you wish to see, certain columns you wish to hide if you don't want to utilize them. So in certain instances, yes, we can accommodate that. But I would not want to risk misleading anybody to think that throughout the whole product, we have that capability to shift things, sounds like equally to what you have in Infinite Vision, but to an extent for things such as the timesheet.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. I appreciate that. Any other questions or anything anyone would like to see while we have the benefit of Rob Ann with us? So one question that I have, because so now my mind is just like reeling here. So I like the real-time update. Does the information need to be updated in Infinite Visions first? Or like, for instance,
Fixing the spelling of the name.
Right, spelling of the name. If I change that in Executime, would that also push over and update Visions? Or is it always better, Visions is our system of record. Is it better to just always start in that, because then
Yes, and that's how the integration is written. Really, we want Infinite Vision to be your system of record. It is the main product. It is the payroll product, of course, that employees get paid from. So it absolutely needs to be accurate. So that would be the best practice recommendation, is to update it in Infinite Vision. The integration is written such that if something is updated in Infinite Vision, it will automatically flow into Executime to update Executime instantaneously in real time. Now, when there is again, full 360-degree flow, but the flow from Executime back into Infinite Vision is going to be total hours related and timesheet related. So what you see on this timesheet, when payroll gives that command that we talked about earlier, this data will flow back into the Infinite Vision product. But and it in turn will update things such as the accrual buckets in Infinite Vision, et cetera. But with the example that you gave of a name, or the example of an email address, or the example of some other component, that will need to be updated in Infinite Vision first, and then that will flow automatically in real time into Executime. Did I lose audio?
No.
Nope, you're good. Thank you.
My previous experience made me a little leery. And I looked up at my microphone and there was no color on it. And I thought, oh my goodness.
Oh. So if a district is currently using ASOP, would ASOP for their subsystem interface into Executime, then Infinite Visions, or would it just continue to go into Infinite Visions like it is now?
I've learned from Cassie that is a bit of a touchy subject. So touchy in the way that it would depend on your organization and on the way that you want the data to flow. We certainly could have data go from ASOP into Executime and then into Infinite Vision, but there are some pros and also some cons with that. So if you already are using integration between ASOP and Infinite Vision for certain things, there are programming components built into that are very efficient and beneficial for you. So what we would want to do, honestly, is chat with you a bit about that in a bit more depth. Again, the trainers that you'll be working with and the project managers are experts on both sides. So they'll help you evaluate that, clearly outlined for you. If you go this route, here are the pros and cons. If you stick with the current pattern, here are the pros and cons. And then they'll allow you to make that decision. We've, I believe, had a few organizations that have made decisions in both routes because various things were a priority to each of them. But we'll make sure to help you evaluate that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I want to let everybody know that joined us, by all means, this is not the last opportunity that you'll have to ask any questions or anything, because I know myself, my mind is rolling right now, but I know I will think of other questions later on as well too. And if you do as well, please feel free to email me, Jill and Mike, or just one of us. And if we don't know the answer, we will definitely reach out to Rob-Ann and Cassie and find out for you.
Yeah, and we can compile those into an FAQ for the districts to reference as well.
That would be great.
That would be great. Thank you. And I know that Mike, when he does his recording, he records the questions as well too. So if anybody had to bow out or come in late or something, you would be able to see some of that flow as well.
Yes, absolutely. And Tracy, I've been keeping track of the questions that have been asked so far during today and writing them down. So after we're done, I'll type them up in a summary. And while I will be reaching out to find answers from our experts and or provide the illustrations that I promised, I'll also CC you immediately so that you can update those questions with additional items perhaps that maybe came in after the presentation or additional things you think of as well. And we're always here to be a resource. So if we can help in any way, we're always happy to.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, if we don't have any other questions, I'm going to thank everybody and let you get off to what else you may need to for the rest of the day, because I know no one has anything to do on a Wednesday afternoon.
Okay.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us. I really appreciate it. I hope you liked what you saw, and hold tight, because in the next day or two, you will get an email from Magic Mike with a link to our YouTube channel that'll have all this recorded, like all of our other mini E's meetings have been as well too. It was great to see those of you that we were able to see, and have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you soon.